The railroads at the Disney parks are, dare I say, more important than things like other attractions or the castles or the restaurants or the shops, because we wouldn't have Disney parks as they exist today without the Disneyland Railroad. Walt Disney was a big fan of the railroad, always was. Even when he was a child in Marceline, Missouri, he would stand by the railroad tracks and wave at the trains as they steamed past. He built a miniature gauge railroad in his own backyard, the Carrollwood Pacific Railroad, and if you want to get an idea for how small the Carrollwood really was, you can actually still view a car that ran along the track in Walt Disney's backyard in Holmby Hills if you visit the Wilderness Lodge at Walt Disney World. It's at the Boulder Ridge Villas. I highly recommend making a visit down there next time you're at Walt Disney World. It's a really neat room. And because Walt Disney World was meant to be a sort of East Coast Disneyland, you couldn't build a Magic Kingdom in the style of Walt Disney's original in Anaheim without its own railroad as well, and thus was born the Walt Disney World Railroad. And while I am of the opinion that the Disneyland Railroad is the best Disney park railroad in the entire world, the Walt Disney World Railroad comes in a close second, because the rest of them, we'll talk about them. If you looked at the title of this video, you may know that we're talking about the railroads at the international parks. Not Disneyland, not the Magic Kingdom, but everywhere else in the world, or at least in the parks that have them, because some of them don't, and that's a really big shame. Now, for comparison's sake, let's start off this video by listing all of the railroad stations in the United States parks. This will be important later. I'm gonna do a test or something. The Disneyland Railroad has the Main Street USA station, the New Orleans Square station, the Toontown station, and the Tomorrowland station. That is 4 stations. Meanwhile, the Walt Disney World Railroad has 3. Main Street USA, Fantasyland, / Storybook Circus, and Frontierland. So 3 stations there. Not as many as Disneyland, but it is, technically a bigger railroad. The Magic Kingdom is a bigger park, but not quite as many stations. Makes it a little bit harder to navigate the park on the railroad. But now, my friends, let's go across the ocean, across the Pacific Ocean, to the 3rd Disney resort ever built, Tokyo Disneyland. Now, Tokyo Disneyland is a very unique example of a railroad. While Tokyo Disneyland does feature a Rivers of America, like Disneyland and the Magic Kingdom formerly, it also features a railroad. However, the Tokyo Disneyland Railroad does not encircle the entire park. It only encircles 3 lands, and because of this, it's not called the Tokyo Disneyland Railroad. Instead, it's called the Western River Railroad. Now, saying that might bring to mind the Western River Expedition, a canceled attraction for Walt Disney World that was meant to be a sort of Pirates of the Caribbean style replacement for pirates, themed to the Wild West. But the Tokyo Railroad has nothing to do with the Western River Expedition. Sorry to burst your bubble there. However, the Western River Railroad is completely different from any of the other railroads in the world. And that's because, my friends, it is an absolutely horrible mode of transportation. The worst mode of transportation in any of the Disney parks anywhere in the world, because there's only one station. You get on at the Adventureland station, and you exit at the Adventureland station. No other stops along the line, which, if you ask me, is a dang shame. Because the Western River Railroad also travels through Western Land, which is their Frontierland, and Critter Country, which is their Bayou Country, formerly our Critter Country. Just trying to make it a little easier for everyone here to understand. Now, why is it, my friends, that the Western River Railroad, the closest thing we have to a Tokyo Disneyland Railroad system, only has 1 station and makes a complete loop around the track without stopping at multiple stations along the way? And that's actually kind of a funny story. You see, when Tokyo Disneyland opened in 1983, a year after Epcot, that's how I keep it in my head, there was a law in Japan making it so that any railway system at all, would have to operate like a conventional railroad system, where you would have to run on a timetable and charge passengers a fare. And Disney obviously didn't want to do this. What if the ride went down for whatever reason and the timetable couldn't be met? What if they didn't want to charge guests to travel between Adventureland and Westernland, or Westernland to Critter Country? So they decided to make it just one stop in Adventureland where you board the train, and 1 stop where you get off of the train. They're the same stops. It's just a big circle that you do. And while that law did change in 1987, it still remains that way to this very day. And I do believe that it eventually might end up going away. Disney released new concept art for this land that features the railroad completely gone. So you never know. Love your railroad while you still can. And now, my friends, let us switch gears, journeying from Tokyo, Japan to Paris, France, to Paris. Wait, hold on. Let me just fix this up real quick here. All the way to, yes, Disneyland Paris. Now, Disneyland Paris differs from Tokyo Disneyland in that Disney had much more of a financial stake in the park, which is why the whole Disney decade under Michael Eisner got kind of canceled or, skewed about because the failure of Disneyland Paris, then known as Euro Disneyland when it opened, affected the company in a very, very negative way. But now, in the present, Disneyland Paris is doing pretty good. It's got some wonderful nighttime shows, some roller coasters, a second park that is seeing a massive expansion, and, my friends, it even has a Phantom Manor. I mean, come on, what other reasons do you need to visit? Now, I believe it is also now the most visited theme park in Paris, which, that's good. And when it comes to the Disneyland Paris Railroad, not a lot of notes. Actually, no notes at all. It has a Main Street USA station, a Frontierland station, a Fantasyland station, and a Tomorrowland station. Sorry, Discoveryland station. Just like the original Disneyland. The Frontierland station is the New Orleans Square station, and the Toontown station is the Fantasyland station. It's the same kind of deal. All 4 stations connecting the park. It's a wonderful mode of transportation to get around. But you're not here to listen to me talk about how similar this is to the Disneyland Railroad. You're here to hear some weird facts about overseas railroads. So I'm gonna give you a weird fact about the Disneyland Paris Railroad. You ready? I just have to find one first. Here's one. All of the trains on the Disneyland Paris Railroad are exact clones of the CK Holiday from the Disneyland Railroad in Anaheim. They're all built to the exact same specifications as the CK Holiday. And each of the cars on the Disneyland Paris Railroad have their own names. The W.F. Cody's cars are called the Silverton, Durango, Denver, Wichita, and Cheyenne, cities from the Wild West. The CK Holidays trains are named after resorts from the eastern U.S., Coney Island, Atlantic City, Long Island, Niagara Falls, and Chesapeake. And then the George Washington, they have a train called the George Washington, like the president George Washington, has its cars named after places that are associated with him: Mount Vernon, Boston, Philadelphia, Yorktown, and Valley Forge. And lastly, the Eureka, named after, the thing you yell when you strike gold, has its cars named after different cities in California: San Francisco, Los Angeles, Monterey, San Diego, and Sacramento. A practice that used to be in place in Anaheim but has since been retired. The cars still have names, obviously. They're not like fun names though. Cattle car, gondola, that doesn't roll off the tongue quite the same. That is, except of course for one specific train car on the Disneyland Railroad, the Lily Bell. That's its name. The Disneyland Paris Railroad is about as close as you can get to Walt Disney's original railroad in Anaheim, which I think is kind of neat. Maybe that in of itself is a cool little fact about it. But now we move back to the Asian parks. We've talked already about Tokyo Disneyland. Let's move now to Hong Kong Disneyland. Now, Hong Kong Disneyland, I think, is kind of an underrated park. Their castle, I think, is a wonderful evolution of the original Anaheim Disneyland castle, which it was when the park first opened. And they got Mystic Manor. While it might not be the first resort people think of when they think of an overseas Disney resort, I think Hong Kong Disneyland kind of flies under the radar. Now, when it comes to railroads, the Hong Kong Disneyland Railroad strikes that sort of balance between the Magic Kingdom Railroad and the Tokyo Railroad. There's not one stop. And no, my friend, there aren't 3 stops, there are only 2. Main Street USA, right up there at the front of the park, and Fantasyland. And while the trains still do circle the park and go through all of the other lands, it does not stop at each of the lands like in Disneyland. But that's not the fun fact I have about the Hong Kong Disneyland Railroad. My fun fact is that these aren't steam locomotives at all. See, the locomotives in Hong Kong Disneyland are actually gas-powered. They're diesel engines. So you know that wonderful smell that permeates the air when you're going to ride the Autopia or the Tomorrowland Speedway? That also permeates the air if you want to take the Grand Circle Tour around the park or just go to Fantasyland in Hong Kong. And the sounds that you hear, the classic steam locomotive sounds while the train is chugging down the track, the chuffing and the steam whistle, those aren't real. They are electric, played from speakers aboard the train itself. And while that is kind of weird, I do think it's kind of neat at the same time. It would make sense that the sort of strangest Disney park in the world also has the strangest railroad. And it is certainly better, my friends, than Shanghai Disneyland's railroad, which we'll get to in a second. I love talking about Shanghai Disneyland's railroad, because it definitely has one. But Hong Kong's is certainly unlike any other Disney park railroad in the entire world. It is definitely unique. And there aren't any plans to demolish it anytime soon, like there are in Tokyo, so I will take that as a win. Okay. Let's go to Shanghai. Let's talk about it, because I need to talk about this. This rubs me the wrong way. I'm very annoyed with you, Shanghai Disneyland. Wow, look at that beautiful 3D view of Shanghai Disneyland. Thank you, Google Earth. Now, while Shanghai Disneyland does have what appears to be a railroad station at its entrance, it's even modeled after that original Main Street USA style railroad station from Anaheim, just a little bit upgraded, you know, a bit fancier. Shanghai Disneyland does not, my friends, I repeat, does not have a railroad. It's the only Magic Kingdom style park in the world without any sort of railroad. Doesn't even have a Big Thunder Mountain, in case you were wondering. No railroad at all in Shanghai. And that's what I think sort of lends itself to, this was the park that was opened under Bob Iger, right? This is the only castle park, the only Disneyland-style park that opened under Bob Iger. No railroad. No railroad. I'm not saying that those two facts are connected. I'm just saying it's really interesting, something you need to think about. Now, it may sound like I'm being a little bit harsh to Disney here, and actually, I kind of am. You know, I do think I'm being a little bit overdramatic here, just a tiny bit. It is the newest Disney park in the world. It hasn't had sort of a chance to build itself out yet. They had a new Zootopia land open recently. It was a bit of a smaller land, but it was an expansion. So we'll see how Shanghai gets along in 10, 15 years. We'll see how big it is, maybe if it gets a second park in the Shanghai Disney Resort. But not opening with a railroad is really sad. At least all of the other parks, even the ones that didn't do it quite as well, like Tokyo, still tried to do a sort of Disneyland-style railroad, because that's what Disneyland was all about at the beginning. It was just a giant train set for Walt to walk around in. I don't think they're necessarily required for castle parks these days. They should be, but I mean, obviously Shanghai is showing that you don't necessarily need a railroad in order to make a successful castle-style park. I just think they'd be a whole lot cooler if they did have a railroad. Just saying. Be a whole lot cooler if you did. But like I said, maybe I'm being too tough on old Bobby Eyes over there. Maybe the reason Shanghai Disneyland doesn't have a railroad is because it's not as romanticized in China as it is in, say, Paris, or the United States, for that matter. Many guests arrive to Shanghai Disneyland on board a train, and the last thing they want to do when they're in the park trying to enjoy their day is ride another train around. And another thing that sort of ties this all together is that there's less Americana everywhere at Shanghai Disneyland. At Hong Kong, you still have Main Street USA. At Tokyo, you have the World Bazaar, which is modeled after Main Street USA. And then all of the other parks have a Main Street, except for Shanghai. See, instead it has Mickey Avenue, which is sort of still a tiny bit turn of the century America, but more so, it's like a less themed version of Toontown. It's less in your face. Instead of being themed to a turn-of-the-century small American town, it's themed to Mickey and his friends. There's less nostalgia there for the turn of the century. There's less of a reason for them to want to ride a railroad around the park. And why build a railroad if nobody is going to enjoy it and nobody wants to ride it? That's, I mean, kind of fair. It adds a lot of kinetic energy, which I think is one of the most important things you can have in a theme park. But you can go ahead and apply that argument to the Liberty Bell or Tom Sawyer Island over at the Magic Kingdom. They're ripping that out in order to build a Cars expansion, even though the rivers and the riverboat added a lot to the scenery of the land. The scenery just isn't as important as utilizable attraction space, shops, dining. I gotta stop talking about them filling in the rivers of America. I gotta get over it. I talk about it in every single video. And so they're filling in most of the rivers of America, hopefully relocating the Liberty Bell and not building a railroad at Shanghai. I hope this sort of puts that into a little bit of a better perspective for you. Essentially, they didn't build it because there's no reason for one, which makes me even more confused as to why they have one in Hong Kong, and it's a really, really good one. Now, I personally think a railroad at a castle park is extremely important. While Disneyland or Disney World or Hong Kong, Tokyo, Shanghai should never be a museum, I do think that it's a wonderful way to move around the park, but also a reminder of what came before. Why Disneyland exists in the first place. You can change out the stations, you can change out the dioramas, that's fine, you don't want it to be a museum. And let me tell you, my friends, every time I ride past the Grand Canyon diorama on the Disneyland Railroad, I feel like I'm in a museum. It feels like something you would see in a nature and science museum. And it's not original, so those things can come and go as the years go by, but I think the railroad right there at the entrance of the park at Main Street USA serves as a reminder of where we came from. You walk through the tunnel into Main Street, USA, see the past before journeying off into different lands based on movies or the future. In the words of Bob Iger, it's quintessentially Disney, and I hope it sticks around for many, many years in the future. I mean, for crying out loud, they're rerouting the thing for Villains Land, and they rerouted it for Tron, they rerouted it for Star Wars Galaxy's Edge at Disneyland. I think it's safe for at least another 70 years. Another 70 years of us wandering around the parks, getting hot in the middle of the day, grabbing a Dole Whip, grabbing a churro or a box of popcorn, and enjoying the grand circle tour of the Magic Kingdom. Whether that's actually the Magic Kingdom or Walt Disney's original Magic Kingdom or any of the Magic Kingdoms overseas, that's what's important. Except you can't eat on the Disney World Railroad. It's so stupid. It's so dumb. Disneyland is so much better when it comes to trains. Hey there, everybody. Welcome to July, the month of test tracks and Rivers of America closures. That's actually going to happen here within the next few days. It might have already happened, I believe, by the time you're watching this. I'm not going to Google the closing date. I know it's beginning of July, though. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to hit the like button. And if you're new around here and you want more videos like this, be sure to hit that subscribe button. Join the over 300,000 other Offhand Disney fans who have the sub boxes open for my videos whenever they go live. A very big thank you, of course, as always, to my supporters over at patreon.com/offhanddisney. They get exclusive early access to videos and exclusive communication channels with me. If that sounds interesting to you, please be sure there will be a link in the description down below. I'm not editing it. It's the end card. If you're interested in that, there will be a link in the description down below, and even just $1 a month will get you access to most of the perks. However, my friends, if you'd rather follow me for free, which is totally understandable, I totally get it, I would follow me for free on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and Blue Sky. My @ is Offhand Disney, just makes it a little bit easier for you to find me wherever you are. But my friends, that is the end of this video. I got to get right in my Test Track 3.0 video. I still haven't seen spoilers for that ride, by the way. I am going in completely fresh, completely clear of anything. I'm so excited. I've heard wonderful things. That's in a few weeks. But until then, everybody, we'll see you here next week. Same time, probably same place. If you've made it this far, leave a comment as to what kind of video you'd like to see next week. I'm taking requests for next week only. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll see y'all there next week. Goodbye.